I feel like Carla and Alex.
It's getting serious on this track, fam.
The power's in the people, not in the leader. Authority in the steeple is extinguished by the readers. All throughout history, common people change the world. It ain't no mystery, their beliefs have been swirled.
After the fall of Rome, 500 CE, feudalism became known. We changed Earth's history. Lords and kings ruled the land. They owned vast manors. Peasants loved a helping hand. Serfs thought lords were scammers. They had feudal contracts, but the vassals were a hassle. Nobility prevented attackers with their armies and their castles. The Crusades and the plague killed millions in the way. The church was being vague. No one wanted it this way. Fall of Constantinople brought scientists to the West. It triggered the Renaissance, which ended this whole mess.
1500, a new time was a-comin'. Al-Andalus was a blast, culture center of the past, uprising the middle class, the printing press moved ideas fast. People's brains weren't the same, they believed in humanism. All those names. Machiavelli wrote The Prince. It was aiming to convince the leaders who were hesitant it's better to be loved and feared, but if one has to make this, to be feared, it has its bliss. A new time forward, lit and art, carving paintings from the start, frescoes and vanishing points to find the painting's detailed art. City-state families ruled over Italy, commissioned paintings made throughout cities, brought people in Europe closer to Sicily.
October 31st, 1517, Martin Luther brought his brain, nailed it to the church building. Stated his complaints, the church had been slacking. 95 BC's revolution started stacking. People were done with the Catholic Church, it had sinned quite a lot. Simony, nepotism, priests were doing it over the top. People didn't like this one bit. There was about to be a schism. They wouldn't submit, sending up activism. Protestantism was a word that began to come to light. Its separation from corruption helped it take flight. Luther hid with German princes after the Diet of Worms, thanked them for helping out. They were on better terms, and now England has come out to be part of this relation, stepping into the pool of a new birthing nation.
Holy moly, we just cracked the code. Let's explore, take a tour of our growing world. Chris wanted to find a new route to India. He stumbled upon land called the Americas. So the Columbian trade to profit off the natives. Cocoa and gold became main staples. Guns, germs, and steel, it was about to get real. Natives dropping like flies in Mexico and Brazil. Portugal became greedy, wanted better slaves than natives. Africa had slaves speedy, the influx created. The transatlantic slave trade, not for better but for worse. Prisoners of Africa worked in Europe. Laborers in South America turned out sugar cane. This unfair slavery caused much pain. August 24th, 1572, a massacre was about to ensue. A wedding day death trap. Catherine gave him a slap. The Huguenots were targeted. Protestants were closeted. Henry, Henry, Henry. Oh, there were so many. Cousins against foe. De Guise was a no. The war was intense and blood was shed. At some point, one of the Henrys said,
Ami, attends, c'est mon pays partant. But then the king got stabbed by a crazy monk, which put France into a funk. Henry IV came to power. It was France's golden hour. Converted to Catholicism, prevented him from an exorcism. Paris is well worth the mass. The hatred for Henry did not last. Edict of Nantes in 98 made life for Protestants so great. Henry IV had intendants which gave him independence.
His son, the 14th, lied to France with false teeth. He said, l'état c'est moi. He was eating foie gras.
Lived in beautiful Versailles, was a really artsy guy. Despite being Catholic, he was kinda egotastic. Called the Sun King an absolute monarchy. Made the nobles dependent. They had to live on his property. 1215 was England's dawn. It all started with King John. He signed a little something called the Magna Carta. It worked a little differently than during the time of Sparta. First he used the word parliament. He was filled with discontent. Hey, by the way, have you ever seen Game of Thrones? It was inspired by something called the War of the Roses. It was between two royal families, the York and Lancaster. They were fighting for authority. After a generation was skipped, the feud finally dipped, finally combined to create the Tudor. There could be a new line of rulers. Henry VII told Henry VIII, "You could only be great if a son you create," so he needed a date. Henry had many wives, 3 Catherines, 2 Annes, and a Jane. He changed all of their lives. They're just ending in pain. Divorced, beheaded, died. Divorced, beheaded, survived. Although many were slaughtered, he got a son and 2 daughters. Mary and Edward soon met their demise, but Elizabeth began to rise. She united the country through religion, saved the Netherlands from Spain. She was on a mission. She didn't pay attention to her suitors. This made her the last of the Tudors. After she died, her cousin's son came to power. James translated the Bible. Parliament was his rival. It wasn't England's finest hour. When it came to the royals, we had religious turmoil, the gunpowder plot to blow up the Parliament. Protestants were taught not to put up an argument. Soon came along a civil war. The king's beliefs caused an uproar. Parliament against the king. What a surprise. The parliamentarians, the people, took home the prize. Next, the Cromwell family took the throne, but England said, "Leave us alone." The crowd was restored with Charles II, but absolutism was about to be wreckage. The Glorious Revolution was, quite honestly, what established England as a constitutional monarchy. The days of tyranny were over. England was about to get a makeover.
In the Middle Ages, science wasn't developed. It was difficult to wage it, and the research was seldom. Earth, air, fire, water all tried to live together. Universe kept going by the side to keep it afloat. Geocentric theory was believed to be true. Copernicus came up and said, "Screw your Earth orbits the sun. It ain't no mystery." Newton came to 6 with the laws of gravity. Otto Descartes was with analytic geometry. Andreas contributed human anatomy and originated vaccines. Galileo made telescope machines. With laws of planetary motion, we still even dove into the ocean. Scientific revelations, but of other problems, government status, debated, politicians squabbled. This brought in the Enlightenment, a temporary Senate, Voltaire, Rousseau, Locke, Hobbes. Here we go. First up is Voltaire. As we grow up, we form judgments. Famous long gray hair. Prejudice becomes pungent. Men need to be free. It doesn't lead to crime. Christianity is a prison for a lifetime. Next up is Rousseau, a gentleman. He was advantaged. Similar to Locke's flow. Government kept people managed. Control international affairs. Individuals got all the cares. Democracy was conflicting. Much good and bad that it could bring. Don't forget about Locke. Humans are free. Below the clock. Low-key government is needed to keep the better corruption weeded. In a state of perfect freedom. Don't destroy this peace by enforcing leaders. Most importantly, of course, Hobbes brought human forth with force. The humans were in a state of constant war. They needed strict guidance to continue to soar. A man's natural condition is unbalanced. Strict government kept civilians callous. These philosophers open the eyes of many. Perfect government's prize. Which system would succeed and which would demise, inspire modern government's authoritative experiments. The power's in the people, not in the leader. Authority in the steeple is extinguished by the readers. All throughout history, common people change the world. It ain't no mystery, their beliefs have been swirled.